Nanti ada coffee break-nya nggak setelah ini, ada coffee break atau sampai roll?
Nanti sekitar selesai sore jam 6.
Jam 6. Ada networking lagi ya? Oh, oke. Oh, oke. That's good.
Well, isn't this music lovely? Huh? Gentle afternoon. What do you prefer, the sound of music or the sound of The Sound of Music. Now that would be a good title for a really good musical, wouldn't it? It would last a long time. Forgive me, it's that time of the afternoon on a Monday, the start of the week. So Chris is feeling that way. For those that don't know me, I'm Chris Wren. I'm the CEO of BritCham Indonesia. It's a pleasure to welcome everybody here today, this afternoon, to the World Trade Center complex. Our offices are in number 5. So we have the Starbucks at lobby level, which means I only see my team half the day because that's where they spend the rest of their time. But if anybody ever wants to pop into the BritCham offices on the 15th floor, very, very welcome to do so. We'd be happy to welcome you. This is Kiroyan Partners and BritCham Partnership event. For those of you who are not aware, I think for the 3rd, maybe the 4th year now, Kiroyan Partners has been the advocacy partner for BritCham, meaning that we are working together on being in a position to provide options, solutions, advocacy to some of the challenges that businesses face here in Indonesia. As we know, there's a fair amount of legal uncertainty surrounding many things, a fair amount of regulatory complexity as well surrounding many things. So at different times, our members do come to us and say, how can you help with this? And we're delighted to have the professionalism, the expertise that's afforded BritCham and its members through the Kiroyan relationship. Thank you very, very much indeed. And we're delighted that continues. Our event partners today are Wildlife Works, who I do believe are represented here. Where are you? Thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for joining us. And our venue partner, the Jakarta Land. I was mentioning to one of our guests a little bit earlier that actually we'll be doing more of our events here at the World Trade Center complex. Not simply selfish because we don't have far to move our collateral and so on. But actually it's difficult getting convenient venues, and I think many people who are involved in event organisation will be aware that hotels have cracked their prices up quite considerably. So this represents a very, very cost-effective and efficient option as well. A little bit of background to this particular event. November the 30th to December the 12th, 2023. There was this thing called COP. It was in Dubai, COP28, and this time it was aiming for the first Global Stocktake, GST, of the Paris Agreement. Indonesia pledged to achieve its net zero emissions by 2060. it is now felt that to realise the country's ambitious goals, urgent collective actions need to be taken, and particularly with a focus on private-public partnerships to scale up those efforts and to bridge gaps. In consideration of this, BritCham Indonesia and Kiroyan partners extend a warm invitation to you, or a warm welcome to you, on this occasion to take the opportunity to delve deeper into those important discussions about sustainable businesses in Indonesia, the significance of the public-private partnerships in addressing the climate crisis, and also to offer some practical insights for climate initiatives. Our format today will be to have a keynote message or messages, I believe, from Dr. Fifi Yudhaswati. Then there will be a moderated session with our head of our Climate Change and Environment Hub, as we now call it, Jeffrey Chatelier, more about him a little bit later. And for all BritCham events, whether they're builders networking or not, everybody is here, has a common interest, and therefore we like to provide everybody with that opportunity to exchange business cards, have a conversation, and just see where you sit with each other in terms of the possibility of working together. So there'll be some drinks and some snacks available afterwards as well. But first of all, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Fifi Yudhaswati. She is the Deputy Minister for Maritime and Natural Resources Affairs at the Ministry of the National Development Planning of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapenas, as many of you will be aware. Dr. Fifi obtained her bachelor's degree from the University of Indonesia in 1991, followed by a master's degree from the University of Madison in Wisconsin, USA in 1999. She further solidified her academic journey by earning a doctorate from the University of Southern California in the States in 2004. In her professional journey, Dr. Yudhaswati has held key leadership roles, serving as the Director of Community Protection and Welfare from 2012 to 2016, followed by the Directorship of Poverty Alleviation and Community Welfare from 2016 to 2018. Currently, she serves as the expert staff to the Minister of National Development Planning for Social Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, a role she has held since 2018. Presently, she holds the pivotal position of Deputy for Maritime and Natural Resources. Ladies and gentlemen, for her keynote messages, please welcome Dr. Fifi Yudhaswati.
Yeah, okay. I can.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Chris, the Executive Director of the BritCham Indonesia, for nice introductions. I'm so sorry, maybe missing some, to mention some of name. Bishuhaila Hakim? Is not clear? Pak Neil, okay. And then Pak Edwin, who will be represented by Pak Pradana, Ibu Mas Ayu Finanda. And of course, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all the members of the British Chambers of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me and giving an opportunity to provide some, not the messages maybe, but sharing some progress of what Indonesia have been made around climate change. I just came back from the WEF, the World Economic Forum, economists, the CEOs, and many more. But the topics they're talking about was about the climate change, food, the water, and also the energy. and around that area. So I think all of us in the global now, south, north, everywhere, talk about what we call as a triple planetary crisis. First, of course, about the climate change. But for Indonesia, we have also to aware that we have to face the other crisis about the pollutions coming from the water, pollutions, air, and of course the solid waste. And the last is about the biodiversity. Next. And the biodiversity loss. Indonesia has been a second biggest or largest biodiversity in the world. And for the oceans is the biggest one, of course. When we are talking about the trend of loss of some of our species, it will threaten of our food in the futures, and of course the balancing of the earth, and of course the welfare for the men or for the people, and at the end it will impact also to the climate change. Today I just want to emphasize the gravity of these issues, and of course their interconnectedness and the urgency of adopting of the holistic approach to ensure the sustainable future. It is heartening to see all of us and of course the global increasingly recognizing the importance of tackling of these issues. In the context of climate change, I think we should aware that it is not only the environmental issues, it is now already a development issue which is interrelated and has an impact on one another that demands our immediate actions and attentions. We can clearly see that the impact of the climate change today, namely rise of the extreme weather, also some impact on the food productivities, increase of the water scarcity. I think some of the areas already experience about the water scarcity. There are some disasters on the health issues in some areas. For example, in some areas that already distinguished for the malaria, now they came back again. So the faster recurring period of the El Nino is also giving more risk. The impact of climate change hampers to Indonesia mainly because we are islands. We are the biggest archipelagic country in the world. And the impact of this, of course, already happening in the coastal zone. The high vulnerability and or dangerous, like the high waves for sailing, already happening and worsen the income of some fishermen. And of course, the reduction of the sea ecosystem quality, giving an extremely negative impact from the sea or the climate change. Therefore, a holistic and integrated approach is needed to ensure the sustainable future. In the next slide, you can see here that we continuously strengthen the development pathway, and one of it, this is also supported by the UKFCDO through the Low Carbon Development Initiative, now already extended to several more provinces. In the previous time, in the first stage, we already have 10 areas that already developed the plan as well as the action plan, and there are some good stories, i.e. from Riau, for example, some of the businesses already go more sustainable in the whole business and value chains. So what we did is actually we incorporated the target of the reducing emissions intensity in the current midterm development plan, and now we also put the emission intensity, not the emission reductions, but the intensity. So the denominator would be the economic activities, as part of the target in the long-term development plan 2025-2045. By having that, we hope that we can grow up our economy more green. With these visions, next slide please. This is the ones that I mentioned about the long-term development plan. The visions, when we achieving 100 years by 2045, we could be part of the advanced country that is sovereign, developed, and sustainable. It is essential to consider that sustained GNI per cap or per with developed nations is not possible to be achieved if we don't care or take care the environment quality. So a shifting economic pathway toward a green economy is a must for Indonesia. The green economy policy with ambitious to low carbon and climate resilient development policies are able to support Indonesia in achieving net zero emissions by 2060 or sooner. So I believe some of the businesses now already daring to mention that achieving like 2045 or 2050. So as low carbon development is the backbone for the green economy policy in Indonesia, it is imperative for us to set a higher target on how Indonesia achieve the greenhouse gas emission reductions, as well as the emission intensity reduction that I mentioned earlier. So it is in the next 20 years, we set that the cumulative reductions would be around 80.98% annual reduction in 2045. And additionally, 93.5% of emission intensity reductions is also targeted to realize green and sustainable development, as well as to achieve the net zero emissions target by 2060 or sooner. So in the next slide, of course, there are more ambitious targets. You could see here about decarbonization scenario that can be elaborated further into sectors or industries. So, for example, in the energy sectors, I think British or UK part of the jetty, and of course there are many more sectors like shipping industry, for example, and of course on the agriculture and forest and land use. So I think next slide, there are some signs that I just have one more minute. Okay, speaking of the PPP, I think it's kind of like an alternative effort to strengthening the public infrastructures and of course to boost the economy transformations. Again, not only high but also clean. So we have some scheme. I think Pak Pradana will more talk about the effectiveness of the scheme, but the idea is that PPP, we have developed a mechanism and joint government, joint office of government as a coordination forum to synergize, support the facilities, preparing one-stop services pertaining business license through online single submissions to improve the investment climates, implementation of viable gap fund, enhance project feasibility and partial construction, and many more that have been experienced. Of course, there is not always perfect, but somehow the ecosystem for the public-private partners scheme is already developed. I think some of them. Okay, the remaining is telling about examples, i.e. the dam maintenance and mini hydro power plant in Bintang Bano in West Sumba. This is also part of the PPP that can be beneficial to reduce the fossil fuel consumption from the power plant, as well as reducing the GHG emissions. increase the water and agriculture resilience, and also, of course, West Sumba is part of the NTT. That is part of the top priority climate resilience. We are now preparing for the presidential instructions for climate resilience, particularly putting priority to highest priority districts and cities. There are some studies that we already mapped the different resilience level among regions. Of course, there are some challenges and opportunity in implementing the PPP for the climate actions. Some potential projects for climate actions are still considered risky and not necessarily profitable. Also, the PPP scheme requires uniqueness in the proposed project and cannot be easily replicated from one type to another and require a lengthy process. And of course, the success of the PPP project depends on the pre-planning of risk management, which is associated with the identification of the major risks and also the allocations between public and the private partners. Some opportunities though, we still have it. Climate issues already become a global concern and of course an agenda, emphasizing the importance of the green and resilience infrastructure on a global scale. Must be along the line with many other global agenda. We can, of course, leverage the impact of the climate change to improve resilience by developing green infrastructure. And finally, government support, including the implementations of fiscal incentives such as tax allowance and many others, play a crucial role in attracting investment. I think by having this gathering, I really appreciate that we can discuss together, we can bridge all the gaps and of course innovate more on solutions, lead toward a greener development. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fifi. Great to get something short, sharp, and to the point from government. Excellent. And that last slide about opportunities and challenges, I'm sure will be part of the focus of our moderator this afternoon. Jeffrey Chatelier, as mentioned. Jeffrey is the chairman of the BritCham Climate Change and Environment Hub, which is now the most supported of the BritCham, the 7 BritCham hubs by members. Just for people's reference, in order to be a member of a hub, you need to be a member of the chamber. It is part of the value proposition of membership. The team will be happy to discuss that with any of you later. But by way of introduction to Jeffrey, he is a conservation scientist and the CEO of Forest Carbon, a forest restoration and conservation company with offices in Jakarta and Singapore. Mr. Chatelier has advised major corporations, multilateral institutions, and also governments on conservation finance, forestry, and sustainability for over 14 years throughout Southeast Asia. As the director for Forest Carbon's Sumatra Merang Peatland project, Jeffrey has established a proven business model for large-scale tropical forest restoration. Launched with a $6 million investment from the UK-based Althelia Climate Fund, the project has now secured long-term sales contracts totaling over 25 million to major global brands and project operations across more than 22,000 hectares. Jeffrey designed the project, which reduces the risk of fire, restores a habitat for endangered species, strengthens local communities, and delivers returns for investors and partners. Since 2020, Jeffrey has raised $24 million in equity and debt financing for Forest Carbon from UK-based AXA investment manager and in Indonesia here, Saratoga Investama. Mr. Atelier is now focused on building a portfolio of forestry assets to accommodate rising demand in the natural climate solutions sector, with the objective of protecting 1 million hectares of mangrove, peatland and tropical forest areas by 2026. Jeffrey holds a BA in International Affairs from George Washington University and a Master of Environmental Science from Yale University, and is a former Fulbright Research Scholar at the Institute of Technology in Indonesia. It gives me great pleasure to pass the floor and the rest of this afternoon's proceedings to Jeffrey and subsequently to his panel. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Chris. The bio sounded much longer listening to it when I wrote it, but thank you very much. Dr. Fifi, I enjoyed your presentation. It's great to see that climate mitigation and climate adaptation really being integrated into Indonesia's long-term economic planning. Today we've got two great panelists. We're going to be talking about public-private partnerships in Indonesia, and we're going to start with two presentations and then followed by a panel discussion. So I'd like to introduce my panelists. I'll do both of them right now, and then we'll kick it off with a presentation from Pak Pradana Murti. Pak Pradana Murti currently serves as the Risk Management Director at PT Sarana Multi Infrastructure. In his extensive career with the company, he has held various key positions, including Head of Sustainable Finance for the last 2 years, and also Head of Project Development from 2013 to 2020. Prior to his tenure at PT Sarana Multi Infrastructure, Mr. Murti worked as a consultant at Steer Davies Cleave in the UK from 2004 to 2009. During this period, he also had a brief secondment as the Interim Commercial Analysis Manager at Great North Eastern Railway and the National Express East Coast in the UK from 2007 to 2008. He holds a Master's of Science in Transport Planning, which he earned from the University of Leeds in the UK in 2003. Additionally, Mr. Murti obtained his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the Institute Technology Bandung in 2002. With a wealth of experience and a strong educational background, Mr. Pradana Murti continues to make significant contributions to the field of infrastructure and risk management. Next, we have Neil Saville, Senior Advisor at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change here in Indonesia. This is where he spearheads initiatives aimed at fostering sustainable growth and development within local communities. His primary focus lies in ensuring that the energy transition brings equitable benefits to all segments of the population. Prior to his tenure at TBI, Neil served as the associate partner at Dalgo, while his career journey commenced in the tech industry. Neil holds a Master's of Business Administration from INSEAD, complementing his academic foundation in mathematics and information engineering from the University of Cambridge. His diverse educational background and professional experience equip him with a unique perspective and skill set to tackle complex global challenges. Neil boasts exceptional proficiency in delivering insights and strategic counsel to both organizations and individuals. Please welcome our panelists today, and we'll start with a presentation from Pak Pradana.
Thank you for kind words. Good afternoon, everyone. As have been mentioned, I think it's needless to say that Great Britain has always been personally close to my heart because I spent a good 7 years there, and actually my daughter was born there as well. So I think this is a good chance to pay back of my knowledge to the greater British Chamber community. So I think first I'd like to start with SMI. I think some of you already know that SMI is created as a special mission vehicle to accelerate infrastructure development in Indonesia. So I think our vision and missions reflects that. But going forward, I think I'd just like to mention that our Minister of Finance, Ibu Sri Mulyani, has instructed us to transform ourselves, not just only a infrastructure financing institutions, but also to act more generally as a development finance institutions in Indonesia. So if you are thinking about World Bank, ADB, so yeah, we are aspired to be a mini World Bank in Indonesia, serving mostly the target will be regional, the regions in Indonesia, local governments in Indonesia, which comprises of more than 500 local governments. So that's a lot. So then also like to mention that although currently we still focus on infrastructures, but we are trying to become specialized and also offer one-stop solutions to infrastructure financing needs. So starting from the financing and investment itself, so we offer products that is more varied than the banking sectors, starting from the top senior loan, down to junior loan, and to the very bottom, which is investment, equity investment, and also offering a sustainable finance theme, the Sharia finance theme, and last but not least, of course, the public sector financing, which is practically financing towards local governments. So whole sectors, including basic infrastructures, that is some of them that you'll be aware that is going to interface with the SDG goals, as well as climate mitigation and adaptation. So aside from financing investment, we also offer advisory and project development services. Now, just like to go into our way of conduct, which is actually we already started to implement ESG for quite a number of years right now. And actually, the first environment and social safeguards framework that we have implemented and applied until now was started formally in 2016, but informally since our inception in 2009. So we've been trying to revise our framework, adapt to how the best practice in the international financial institutions like MDBs. So practically right now we adopted a similar principle of safeguards as what IFC and ADBs has got. But we offer a different kind of flavor, which we are more locally rooted development finance institutions. So everything we do is practically locally focused, and solution will be derived locally as well. And then moving on to our role in sustainable finance. So we are trying to become the first in everything. We're trying to be the pilot of the things that is innovating the financial sectors and progressing and deepening the financial sectors. So things like we are the first institutions in Indonesia to issue a green bond locally. Yeah. And then we are the first institution in Southeast Asia to become the accredited entity for Green Climate Fund. And we are actually enforcing our conduct in sustainable finance and trying to become the best practice reference in Indonesia, and empowering ourselves with SMI Institute. Yeah. So think tank internally in SMI. And then because of those wealth of experience, that's probably why our government, our Minister of Finance, has selected us as Energy Transition Mechanism Country Platform Manager back in 2022. Um, and now, basically, if we are talking about unlocking private sector investment, as Bu Vivi already mentioned, is quite important to attract private sector investment outside of the state budget, the local regional government budget, as well as SMI budget. So I think this is key to Indonesia achieving SDG as well as energy transition goals. So we're trying to do things that is along that line. We try to mobilize financing in the sectors and try to offer things that can actually accelerate, like project development facilities and landscape facilities. And then we are trying to do all that, and basically the outcome or the output is our bigger and bigger involvement in SDG related projects or energy transition projects. Like for example, we are trying to increase our portfolio in renewable energy with the help of various donors. And I think we have SDG Indonesia One Embedded Finance platform since 2018, and we're trying to mobilize various schemes that the donor partners have, from the risking, from grants, from concessional loans. So trying to see how that will apply in projects. And I think this is just a illustration of what our portfolio looks like in the renewable energy sector. We have already involvement in more than 1 gigawatt of renewable energy from hydro, geothermals, solar, wind, biomass. So I think we need to do more. But I think this is showing the flavor of what we have done so far. And since 2022, we are selected as the ETM culture platform. And again, this is another blended finance initiative to try to attract various funds from public and privates to be able to be blended in energy transition projects, be it in PRM projects or IPP projects. From 2022, we have already signed MOUs and agreements with 19 partners, from grant partners, financing partners, knowledge and technical partners, and as well as investment partners. I think this is just showing a few technical assistance that we have received from partners, and just like to highlight TBI because Neil is here. And this is very important because energy transitions also involve not just building new things, but closing or changing old things. So this is very important. The TBI's works like, say for example, how it affect a closure or early terminations of a coal-fired power plant to the social and economic landscape in the region, or broader. So I think this is a very important work that we have never done this before, closing something or changing something into another thing. So this is quite an important work that we have to know how to assess and how to mitigate the impact of that. And this is also showing that the taxonomy of green financing is also being expanded. In ASEAN, ASEAN Taxonomy Board already accepted that coal-fired power plant and certain criteria is considered as a green projects. So therefore, it's important to actually attract investment in that asset class. Last PPP, we've said that we have financed IPP in the past, and currently hydro, geothermal, solar, and etc. But we have also assisted government contracting agencies across Indonesia to try to develop their own PPP and to sell to private sectors. We haven't labeled it as adaptation, but as you can see, there's a lot of water sector projects in there. It's difficult to measure as adaptation projects, but practically what we have been doing in the water sector project is adaptation projects. So we can actually do things like that going forward again. But what I would like to underline is PPP is easier said than done, yeah. Because all the 23 projects that we have assisted, and so far it's only 7 in operation. This is also an opportunity. Street lighting is a good opportunity going forward, and I think with the success of Madiun, I think other cities will probably would like to try a PPP scheme. Yeah. And last slide, I think this is also highlighting that in attracting private sector capital, I think the reduction of cost of financing is important. The risking, with credit risk mechanism, I think those are what usually private sector is looking for in order to actually scale up energy investment and other investment in the climate space. I think that's my take. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the question and answer. Thank you.
Hello everybody, it's a real pleasure to be here. My apologies first of all that the Indonesia country director, Shirella, was not able to attend. Hopefully I can step into her shoes and give a good insight into TBI's thinking around energy transition, energy investment and PPPs. I want to say a few words to start off with about TBI, if that's okay. Just so you understand who we are, where we're coming from, and so on. Excellent. So TBI works with leaders around the world across strategy, policy, and delivery, with tech as the key enabler across all three. We have a footprint in, I think now about 35 countries, in fact, 30 countries announced for sure, with a staff of more than 750 people. Focused on bringing best thinking from around the world to political leaders in order to help affect change. In Indonesia, where I am based, we have about 100 country projects in total in Indonesia. Particularly, we work across investment, economic prosperity, digitization, and healthcare. Operating in some of the real most challenging, interesting, and forward-looking areas of Indonesia's political economy. In particular, we've been helping to bottleneck and move forward investment projects related to the new capital city project in Nusantara, as well as providing policy support across the energy transition, helping to set up the first integrated national enterprise architecture for Indonesia, and facilitating the development of the new health law, as well as supporting ASEAN health ministerial meetings. Okay, so maybe we should start by talking about what it means to do PPP and why we talk about it in the first place. The truth is, the amount of investment that's going to be required for effective, for energy transition, for effective move towards the green economy that we know we need to see is overwhelming for governments to look at. I think we've heard already from Bapanas just what these numbers look like. These numbers in terms of achieving Indonesia's 2030 climate target suggest there's still about half of the investment amount on waiting to be filled. We see government putting forward significant amounts of funding towards this. We see the mobilization of capital from international partners, what we would call kind of public sector funding. We see the private sector already putting funding into this space, and yet the gap is still very, very overwhelming. And this is something we need to figure out, how we get private sector capital in. I think as we heard from PTSMI, there's roles that government can play in helping to facilitate, unlock some of that private capital. And it's essential that we use the mechanisms that are available in order to do that. And PPP is really one of the key ways, bringing in expertise, resources, support from government in order to allow the private sector to feel comfortable, confident, or simply to see the projects for what is available and come in and bring some of that capital to bear. So as I say, governments around the world are budget constrained in terms of what they need to do. And governments know this, and governments are looking to work with the private sector to achieve this. It's also difficult in terms of projects having limited commercial viability, at least at first blush. Sometimes it's difficult to see the commercial viability without interacting heavily with government. And then in terms of international climate finance flows, there's been a lot of commitment. We've seen the commitment that's been made many COPs back. Unfortunately, the global north have not always stepped up. And we've seen over the years of COP, countries coming back and saying, this global north commitment in terms of investment into the energy transition, when and where can we see it? And I think we're starting to see actual movement in that space now. And I think PPP and the blended finance approach that Dr. Adana talked about as well, where we have multiple sources of capital coming together to deliver, are incredibly important in fixing this. So just quickly, PPP helping to bridge the climate financing gap. You'll see on the left is the very simple BOT style of PPP, build, operate, transfer. Effectively, what a government can put on the table, for example, is around putting land, putting assistance in terms of permitting and so on. And it's incredibly important for the private sector that they can get that support and help to unlock and be more rapid in terms of their delivery. From a government side, it can help in terms of not having to put up the initial capital, not having to staff up and run these projects itself, but rather bringing in expertise from the private sector to do so. And having a better, more tested business strategy from companies that can do this in many different places, as opposed to each government having to reinvent itself how it can deliver. And the potential sectors this can apply to are huge, from the green infrastructure through to natural resource management, and even in innovation and technology, a key area for governments to focus on going forward. And we've learned from existing PPP projects around the world, starting with here with the Sarata floating solar. I think really exciting to see. There was a proper 25-year concession put in place. The domestic SOE, being the majority of shareholder, allowed government to have a strong say in the way it moved forward. The reservoir utilization as an alternative to land use, something innovative, something different and exciting that actually helped crowd in interest from around the world. And Masdar, a renewable energy company from the UAE, putting in almost $130 million in order to facilitate this investment. The largest floating solar project in Southeast Asia, based on this cooperation between Indonesia and the foreign investor. Similar in China, we've seen many municipal waste energy projects being put in place. Aggregate capacity of over 130 megawatts. Again, with a long concession, 25 to 30 years, again with a PPA put in place in order to give some kind of clear expectation for the private sector player how they're going to recoup their money. The ADB actually funding around $100 million to help these projects move forward. We've also seen projects that have had a little bit of a harder genesis. There's a hydropower plant in Brazil, around 70 megawatts. 35-year contract duration, which is good, but without a PPA or offtake agreement in place at the beginning, it actually was quite difficult with quite high financial risk for the private sector player, something that they had to mitigate somewhat because they were expecting to sell to a few very large takers of electricity and power, and therefore the risk of one of them didn't end up contracting was quite high. Perhaps even more interesting, there was a 5-year delay or so getting to financial close because they were on the hook to get the environmental permits, and there was no support from the government side in order to facilitate that. And what they found, therefore, was it was very difficult to walk that path. And again, if government is partnering and able to bring these projects forward, that's something that is actually really supportive. And all future projects in Brazil that follow this model actually share responsibility for permitting between the private sector player and the government going forward. Finally, in terms of what we do as TPI, we're supporting projects globally to facilitate PPPs around climate action. In Mozambique, for example, working on a hydropower dam on the Zambezi River, around 1,500 megawatts, 4.5 billion. It's still in the transaction stage, with construction due to start this year. And the government really was struggling to kind of pitch this project to international investors. How did we work with this? We helped them put together a comprehensive planning pipeline, put together an investor prospectus, which really gave the narrative of the story, did a market sounding event to kind of understand what investors would need in order to do that investment, and brought in a regional offtake strategy so that there was a clear financial return for those who would be involved. Do we have time for a video? So I wanted to just hand over to our Executive Chairman, Tony Blair, talking about this project during COP28 at the panel with the President of Mozambique.
In practical plans, and that is, what I would really like to see about the whole climate debate is that it moves from expressions of the problem to things that you can describe as practical solutions. And the role of organisations like my institute is to work with governments like Governor President of Mozambique in order to provide those practical solutions. Now, this Zambezi River project, that is one clear example, because the bit that is now up for the which is the Mavanda Nakuwa part of it, 1.5 gigawatts, that is going to be a dramatically important project. It is in good order. The government of Mozambique have put the structure together in the right way. The finance minister, Tenella, and Carlos Jung, who's the manager of the project, they've done an excellent job. What they now need is to access that climate finance, because there's going to be a gap between the energy price, if they simply went for the cheapest option, and what that option will be through Mavanda Nakuwa. So, for example, the European sounds $90 a ton. I think the CEO is the price that, there's got to be mechanisms that can be used in order to get that finance in. And this is going to be the test of the international community. If a government has a good project, it's put it in order, it's a project that can be invested in, are the mechanisms then there for the transfer of that finance to make it happen? So we have to make sure that we're in a position to allow countries like Mozambique to develop with clean energy. But that can't happen unless they have partners that are prepared to help them get there. And that's not just the international financial institutions, it's the private sector, and it's in particular the large amount of capital that's available for investment if we can get investable projects.
So again, just to reiterate, it's about investable projects, it's about bringing in that capital, and it's about working together to make sure that we can facilitate the energy transition and the move towards an economy that we know has to happen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Neil and Pak Pradana. Please join me on the stage for our panel discussion. Thank you both for the presentations. We have about 30 minutes, so hopefully we can have a nice discussion and discuss to the group. Pak Pradana, I was really interested by the portfolio of renewable energy projects that SMI has been working on. You mentioned almost 1 gigawatt of energy projects. I'd be interested, what is the target for increasing that portfolio, and what types of renewable energy are you really focusing on? And then maybe a bit of lessons learned on what made previous projects successful.
Yeah, thank you. I think the first is corrections, more than 1 gigawatt. Second is what is the target? We don't actually specify specific capacity targets, but actually we want to help the government to achieve their targets, which is actually 70% of energy mix coming from renewable energy in 2025. We are now at around 12%, so still some way. And we know that base load are coming from hydro and geothermal. Hydro, we can say that hydro is the more mature of the renewable energy sectors in Indonesia, and that has been tendered for quite a while now. Our first hydro project was back in 2010, so the PPA of hydro project is quite mature. Yeah. Geothermal is not so. We have already big geothermal projects in operations, but now the challenge is how to get the small to medium scale of geothermal that is spread across Indonesia, how to actually make that feasible and bankable. So with the reduced economical scale and the capacity of developer, sometimes it's also not that big, yeah. So I think this presented a challenge in how to actually make it feasible and bankable. But we have tried to work together with donors to try to de-risk geothermal exploration. So for example, we collaborated with World Bank and GCF and other donors. Yeah. So I think those two base loads, particularly geothermal, needs to be unlocked. The others, we have solar. I think solar potential is great and the cost is reducing, but I think the challenge is how to actually incorporate that into the system planning of PLN, and we are actually eager to wait what is going to be the new RUKN, or the electricity long-term plan of government of Indonesia, and the new revised RUPTL will be, because we are expecting that the energy transition will be illustrated there strongly. So I think the government intention is needed, but the intermediaries like us always need to come up with innovations and structures that can invite private sector capital. I think that's our role, and I think it's imperative to say that this can only be done with collaborations. What is going to be, what is the success factors is, I think government commitment is number one. From planning, regulations, and commitment to contracts is key. But the availability of de-risking and concessionalities are also still important. Yeah, although costs are coming down, but we still need that at the moment. Yeah, so I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have the opportunity to invite Ibu Fifi up to the stage. If she has time, would you like to join us? That'd be wonderful. Sorry about that. Great. I'll continue with Neil, give you a bit of time for come up on stage. I was interested to see that your organization is working with 30 different countries around the world. Which countries have really excelled at launching public-private partnerships, and where does Indonesia sort of rank on the spectrum?
That's a very good question. I think we've worked a lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa in particular, where it's actually quite a challenge for those countries to bring in private sector capital. I think Indonesia is a richer country, more developed country than many of those that we work in, and therefore really has the opportunity to work with more more sophisticated in domestic financial market, as well as maybe more reach into these international players. I mean, I think what we saw in Mozambique was really exciting from the perspective of bringing capital into a sub-Saharan African country in order to really finance the energy transition. This is quite a new space from that perspective. That's gone really, really well, I think. Obviously exciting to get to the construction phase, but just to be able to have the right conversations with developers, with potential financiers, has been, it was a challenge for the country, and hence why we asked if we could support them in the first place. In terms of where Indonesia ranks, I mean, I think my panelist colleagues are speaking very well to what Indonesia is putting on the table. It's an exciting place for the energy transition. There's a lot of commitment here, and I think Indonesia is being very vocal about both the opportunities here, as well as the things that Indonesia can help with as a government, as a set of institutions that are in some ways challenging, not just here, but around the world. And so that's really encouraging to see. In terms of PPP more generally, there's a very long track record of doing PPPs. Most of the infrastructure that is taken care of have been, say, more traditional, so roads, airports, and so on. And I think doing this energy transition is interesting, it's exciting, it's testing a lot of assumptions we've had about the way we do energy within a country. And again, Indonesia's planning, I think, is really impressive from that perspective. But many of these questions have not been solved yet. And we need to figure that out as we're transitioning away from coal towards some of these renewable energies, many of which operate in different ways. You see, for example, California at the moment, during the day, takes almost all its power from renewable sources, solar in particular. But that's a big challenge for a grid that's used to not operating in that way, used to operating with baseload power that can basically be on all the time. So when your grid has to start adjusting to that, you need expertise to come in from around the world. You need financing to come in to help solve some of these infrastructure investment problems, and you need real expertise. And Indonesia is doing very well at pushing forward, but expertise comes from many places. Indonesia should also tap into that, and I think it's doing so.
Very good. Now, Fifi, I was really happy to see your discussion around valuing biodiversity in the country and recognizing the biodiversity loss that's taking place. Now, with further development, expansion of infrastructure, there really is a risk of further biodiversity loss. How is the discussion in Bappenas around this topic, where Indonesia can still meet its development goals, but still also protect and manage its natural resources?
Yeah. Thank you. I think in terms of the policy, is already in place, but of course, with the context of it's more quite dynamic, not only globally, but also in Indonesia context. We are not only aware about one place to another, but we have to aware that Indonesia actually consists thousands of points. So it's not only thinking of Jakarta, for example. That's one thing that we have to map out, the potential, also the gaps, and of course the challenges in the context of the biodiversity. So what we're doing now is revisit our Indonesia Biodiversity Action Plan, and we put it into the context of it's post 2020. This is along the line with the Kunming global framework for the biodiversity. The second thing is about and strengthening the research, because somehow all the potentials need to be transform into what we call as a new source of growth. So in the context of the policy, for example, I think there are more and more in the future we'll move on the bioeconomy, the bioprospecting, including from the oceans, and I think it requires a lot of collaborations with private entities. So at least there are three challenges that we have now. First, of course, the investment on like the blue economy or the green economy. The second on the technology, I think somehow you mentioned about it. Now is there are a lot of choices that we have to not only aware but wisely opt, and of course seeking special expertise on it. And lastly, for the green transition job itself, preparing, we are the fourth populous country in the world, and of course, not only biodiversity for sure, but at least there are those three challenges that we have to take care of.
Okay, thank you. Now on to Pradana. When you were talking about the water sector, you said that these are investments into climate adaptation. Maybe you could map out a little bit what types of investments are you making into the water sector, how are they profitable, and then also how are you measuring their impact from an adaptation perspective?
I'm going to answer the last part first. Yeah, this is also still a challenge for us to actually measure the adaptations. We believe it's an adaptation project, but how to measure is still another thing to crack. Yeah. Again, we need a framework to solve that, and I think working with the partners, yeah, we can actually do that. Yeah, going forward. But in terms of the SMI involvement in the water sectors, I think first of all is our financing activities. Yeah, there are actually some water projects that are already commercially viable, particularly those in big metropolitan areas where you have a quite reliable water utility companies and active private sector players, and quite an attractive consumer tariff. Yeah. So places like Jakarta and some part of the East Java is already quite attractive commercially. But we also actively involved in the project development stage, helping the respective government contracting agency to plan and structure their projects, their water projects. And I think this is quite challenging in this part because usually those areas are having one problem or even more. Either it's unhealthy water utility companies or not quite viable projects. And so we need support in terms of either technical assistance to the water utility companies or the risking mechanism, viability gap funding, or even unitary payment structures or availability payment. Yeah, so I think those creative structures are helping some of the unviable and unfeasible project on the outsets come into operations. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Last year in September, Indonesia launched its carbon exchange on the Indonesian Stock Exchange, and I saw in a few of the presentations carbon being mentioned as a potential way to finance projects. You know, from a government perspective, is that seen as a big opportunity for Indonesia for different types of projects? I know the first project that listed was a state-owned geothermal project. Is that seen as a way to really expand further investment into renewable energy?
I would say that it is because it's going to be one of the alternative or innovative financing. Of course, it's not the only one, but of course it is quite innovative. I think there are still some stages that we need to go or to complete more in the context of the ecosystem. Somehow it's already going on through the voluntary market. So somehow there are some kind like I would say like asymmetric informations between the public and as well as the the private needs. So I think there are some complaint or not in a good situation in this transition. But in the midterm development plan, we already put somehow that 2025 would be a full scale of the implementation. That's one thing. The other, I think we should also take care of the local governments in term, not only in terms of knowledge, but also know-how on the values and taking an advantage of this kind of innovative financing. That's the thing that I don't know, maybe Pradana already have some examples, but I think that's the thing, that's the gap that for the near future we have to take care of it still.
Okay, thank you. Now on to Neil. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Chirata floating solar panel project. Now, when I saw the numbers, it looks like a huge project, right? $130 million of investment. How did that project come together? How did it attract that kind of financing, and what were some of the key things? I know you mentioned it a little bit more, but maybe just dive into that one, because that's quite a well-known project here in Indonesia.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I think it's extremely exciting to start off with the scale, right? I think to be able to say, we are talking, I think, the third largest globally, but certainly the largest in Southeast Asia. To be able to say, we have the space to do this, we have the ability in terms of linking it to the electricity generation grid in Indonesia. And I think, it manages to bring together a real conflation of interests, if you like, and that's really essential when it comes to delivering this kind of PPP project. You had Mazda, who are extremely keen in terms of showcasing the kind of innovation that can really be brought to bear as part of the energy transition. You had Indonesia very, very keen on pushing forward on the energy transition, being able to bring to bear specific projects. Indonesia's energy planning, extremely good, being able to put on the table, these are the things we want to achieve. And so being able to see that conflation of interests, have the discussion both in terms of the want to deliver these projects, the way that the availability of capital meets the need for capital in order to deliver this, the technical space in order to allow that, I think really came together in order to allow Joanna to succeed. But we need many more, right? I think that's really the key message I want to be passing on, is that, for every one Tirana, when we're talking about the what it delivers into the grid, the need of Indonesia in particular, as it scales down coal and scales up renewable, as well as brings more electricity around the country to fully realize Indonesia's goal in terms of electrification. We're going to need many, many more of these examples. And so we have to get to a position where that kind of real bankability of these projects is something that is on the table for investors to see, and is something that the government organisations like PTSMI helps facilitate investment into, so that it's clear what is needed, it's clear what is available, and it's clear to investors how they will actually make the returns that they're expecting as well.
Okay, so I've got an update. We have 10 minutes left. I think it would be good to have maybe one or two questions from the audience. Yes? Can you need a mic, or can you?
It's okay. I can speak up. My name is Min. I would like to speak as a marine conservation diver of 25 years in experience. I have done quite a lot of work, and all these energy transitions and things like that are very good, but I think we're missing a point. I don't mean us, but the whole movement. There are a lot of technologies where we can transition coal power plants into gas right? We can actually capture carbon. I don't mean carbon credit. I mean the physical, volatile, organic compounds. And I had the privilege of attending B20 and G20 in Bali. There's $20 billion was pledged. And there are also a lot of very small footprint, like a football field size, closed loop, waste to energy technology available everywhere in the world. And these are very easily developed, and you can scale it up. All you need is a football field. And you can put the lines up vertically, right? Yeah, I mean, why we have all these lofty goals, which is fantastic, but why isn't there anybody that can, we can immediately impact a particular environment, take away all the rubbish. The rubbish here, by the way, is a monopoly and kind of like a mafia. I've looked into it. So that kind of stuff, we can develop 50 megawatt in 3 years. And all we need is maybe 10 football fields. Solar farm, all this kind of stuff, you need a lot of land, you gotta rewire this, you gotta do this, all that kind of stuff. Why isn't there, first question, why isn't there any program around that sort of technology? And why isn't there program around first stage coal power station? It's not as easy as it sounds to shut down coal power station when it is only being investing in, right? But we can actually effectively remove 80–90% of VOC that comes out of the coal power station. Phase 1, phase 2, transition into gas turbine, for example. Indonesia has gas. But why don't power that be who can actually influence? Don't talk about that. They always talk about the wind. I'm not saying don't do that, but those are too far away and it's not immediately impacting. We can actually demonstrate that in 3 years. Now you can breathe cleanly. Your face is no longer black when you walk in the streets in Jakarta. Why isn't there a program like that? That's my real kind of question. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, maybe touch on what are some of the low-hanging fruit type of projects to waste management, turning it into energy, and then maybe some modification for reverberation of the coal power plants. Sure. Maybe PPP or SMI on what types of are these projects bankable right now?
Yeah, in most cases, it's a problem of the implementations. I'm talking about the ecosystem in the matter of transitions, green growth or green economy things. I think somehow our country is still need to equip more with regulation framework, with financing instruments, and of course many other policies. For example, still examples for floating PV. At the beginning, we have to see, because we are also learning, and this is pretty new for all of us. So this is only few examples that the Minister of Public Works only allow us to use the water body only 5% at the end, and it's not economically viable. So we have to proceed to argue, to back and forth, discussing, and at the end then increase that we could use the body up until 25%, right? Why? It is really important because like is always the case it's always scarce for our countries and our island. This is only one example. So you mentioned about the technology. I think you should talk about the brain. I wonder if there are some brain here. And I know some of their projects is quite good, but then how to really pilot or sandboxing and then incubate, that's really takes some time and some cost. That not always the case that government provide the funding for those series of chain of the incubating. So I don't know. I think this is a good opportunity for private entities to share, and maybe we can discuss about what kind of technology that it is really viable, costless, and effective in transitions. That's only. I don't know if you want to add some more because you
No,
Thank you.
yeah, I was just gonna say, no, I totally agree. I mean, one of the examples that I put up was waste to energy in China. And I think, honestly, the scale was not that big. I mean, it was important, the investment was meaningful, but, you don't solve the issues in terms of energy transition or electrification needs in Indonesia with technology that at the moment the scale is maybe 1 or 2 levels below where we would need it to be. That's not to say in 5 years or 10 years this isn't proven, and I think the way to prove it is for the private sector to step up, say this is a project we can deliver, this is what it would enable us to do within Indonesia or wherever, and therefore to work together to bring the government in and to see mechanisms to deliver it. But it feels like we're just not quite there yet in terms of these technologies being proven, particularly at the scale that we're talking about. And if the private sector brings its innovative capacity to demonstrate that actually this can work at the scale, the business model can work, the supply chains to enable it can work, then I think every government would be sitting up saying, okay, so how can we bring this and make it happen? But that kind of risk taking on the government side, maybe it's something that we just need more proving and we need more discussion in order for projects like that to really be integrated.
Just like to add, as far as I know, Minister of Energy already considering all those that you mentioned, the coal early retirement, coal repurposing, including the use of gas as one of the most potential replacement of coal in the short to medium term. But we are still looking forward to the release of the RUKM, Rencana Umum Ketenagakalistikan Nasional or National Electricity Plan. Yeah. So we are hoping that all that you said is going to be there. Again, coal transition is not easy. It's something quite a novelty everywhere, mostly in the developing countries. And it's difficult to finance. There's not a lot of people would like to finance coal anymore, even though that's for the sake of transitions. So we need a lot of things to be unlocked, like taxonomy and carbon methodology. So this is a work in progress at the moment. So to acknowledge coal transition as an asset class. So once coal transition is already an asset class, then financing can actually see that, oh, hang on a minute, this actually makes sense, and we can actually finance that. So that's what important to be done now in coal transitions. Clear planning, clear structures, and financing will be there. And on waste to energy, I think that's very complex matter. Waste to energy. We've been trying to do waste to energy since 2011, and it's not working at the moment. There's various things that is presented as a challenge. One is a very unstructured way of handling waste at the moment at the municipal level or regional level. There's no upstream to downstream integration. So the public sectors has only have limited budget, very small budget compared to the needs of the waste management in total. So therefore, there's a lot of things are being handed to private sector to take care of at the moment. So therefore, there's a lot of private sector players, but not well coordinated and integrated. So that's one problem. So we need more structure and integration in the waste management from upstream to downstream. And we still started to see willingness from few regions to do that. And also the business model of waste energy involves two parts: the electricity payment, but also the tipping fee. And because of the shortage of budget envelope of all regions in Indonesia, so therefore to be able to afford tipping fee, they need politically they need to reallocate budget to actually add budget for waste and reduce budget for something else. Yeah, so that's the consequences. So it's very difficult for public sector to actually decide to actually pay enough tipping fee to make it happen. But again, we are seeing places to actually trying to make effort for that, and not only waste energy, but we are seeing also RDF, as a potential as well, and we're working on it at the moment.
Great. Well, I think we're now out of time, but I want to thank the panel. It was a very informative discussion, and thank you again for coming tonight, and also for the participation from the crowd. Thanks again.
Menarik ya. One, two, three.
So if we could just have your attention just for a couple more moments. There's a presentation to make from Kiroyan to lead this is Fifi. And also to Pakistan.
Oh ya, oh ya, oh ya. Ini sempat di UK.
To Patnail.
Oh baru banget. Aku kebetulan lagi udah ada
And Pat Jeffrey, something more than a BritCham certificate.
Kalau misalnya ada sepupunya atau temannya yang mau kuliah Jogja bisa banget ke event. Saya education center.
Tapi lebih banyak event.
Iya, jadi kalau jadi open saya seperti tadi kayak satu ya first impression bantu lah kita bisa sih kita ada
baru beberapa tahun ini.
iya baru sih
Ya tahu.
berkembang lah. Semoga tertarik lah mungkin ada kayaknya.
Ya aku bakal ada kayak dia ada temen beberapa yang pengen jualan di dunia semua.
Oh ya.
Dan kebetulan dia juga eksibisi.
Oh iya eksibisi juga.
Ya tahu. Namanya kan dia.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there are some nipples outside. There are some soft drinks, tea, coffee. There's wine. There's beer. Do take the opportunity to relax and have a conversation. in a slightly more relaxed environment. Off you go. Thanks very much to Jeff and all of you for coming along.
Silakan Mas. Iya, nggak apa-apa Mas.
Sorry.